books that came in the last year of his sanity in 1888. It is a pun off of Wagner's, the music we just heard. Götterdämmerung is the twilight of the gods. This is Götzendämmerung, the twilight of the idols. And this refers to the very difficult relationship Wagner and Nietzsche had. They were very close when Nietzsche was young. It's clear Wagner was a kind of father always to Nietzsche. But after the Franco-Prussian War, in which Nietzsche served as a medical orderly, he saw all this devastation. The war made him into a European. He hated the war, the suffering that he saw, the cultural destruction involved in say, the conquest of Paris. Most Germans went the other way. They were very proud of the victory that the Prussians had managed in the war. And Wagner became one of the great cheerleaders, the propagandists of the new German Empire. So this is the kind of the deep reason for the break between Nietzsche and Wagner. But there are other reasons. The kind of Christianity of Parsifal, for instance, the opera of Wagner. Nietzsche wanted to contrast that with the music that really overwhelmed him, actually, on his way from Wagner was Carmen's, Bizet's Carmen. And for those of you who know the opera, I mean, the music is beautiful, but it is a soap opera, and it's a very different kind of project than Wagner. But that captures what Nietzsche is trying to do. He's trying to get away from what he thought was heavy and overblown, just life throttling in Wagner, and wanted the lightness of even the tragic sensuality of Carmen. And that's kind of what you see in this little book, which sums up very well the work that Nietzsche had done over the previous couple of decades. He says, under this harmless title, he originally called this book A Psychologist's Idleness. Under this harmless title, there is hidden a very sharp, precise, and quick digest of my essential heterodoxies. And that's why we chose this book. It really is a great and economical précis of Nietzsche's thought. It was intended originally, I think, as part of the Will to Power, which was to be his great work, but he rethought his masterwork and eventually called it The Revaluation of All Values. This would have been, for that work, a propedeutic, just like Ecce Homo. Ecce Homo was another book he wrote in this year, a very megalomaniac but funny autobiography with such titles as Why I Write Such Good Books and Why I Am a Destiny, which captures the sense of Nietzsche's. He's always entertaining. The Revaluation of All Values was his project, so we'll be talking about that tonight. His health was always bad. I mentioned this especially in relation to his childhood, but his health he was always fighting against the bright light because his eyes were extremely sensitive. He figured that he was 7/8 blind eventually. He had very bad digestive issues. He just suffered a lot. He suffered a lot in his life. And part of that was when he served in the artillery corps for the Prussians. At one point, he suffered a chest wound that was very serious. So again, as I mentioned in my other video, it's not that the Nazi myth of that Nietzsche was the propagandist of the blonde beast, it really has very little to do with reality. Important friendships he had in his life, or one of the people he did look up to, is Jakob Burckhardt, whom he got to know at Basel. And that's important because we're thinking here in terms of the destiny of Europe. And this is going to go into next week with T.S. Eliot's The Wasteland. We're getting into the last years of this progressivist dream, this fantasy, which is going to blow up so spectacularly in just a couple of decades. And these are men who saw that German nationalism was a problem. And so again, the thought that the Nazis would make use of Nietzsche in such a strident way, it just has nothing to do with the system that, well, with the writings that we have. That title, The Twilight of the Idols, it also refers to Francis Bacon, who talked about the idols, of the different kinds of idols that we have, idols of the marketplace, and so on. And one thing that's in common here is that Nietzsche is very concerned with our tendency to always want to see the world the way we want to see it. That whether you're scientistic, whether you're religious, whether you're metaphysical, that we are very subtle and comprehensive in the ways that we try to reshape the facts in order to get the vision that is simply what we want to see. And that is in fact the case so often is partly why I think he has such a hold on us, because he keeps calling our bluff. Now, part of it is that he's got the easy task. He's always on offense. He's never on defense. He doesn't have a system that he's staked out and that he's defending. He's just always, he's the mobile critic of everything. But that's a very useful thing for us, I think, for intellectual honesty. This includes the fact that even though his thought will be amalgamated very quickly with eugenic, social Darwinist theories, and that's part of the story by which Nietzschean thought becomes bastardized into Nazism. And even though Darwin, as I've said before, has an account of a closed system, as Nietzsche does too, but what Nietzsche did see, and Danilo referenced this a while back, that any scientific system, including Darwinian systems, there's still a truth that their advocates want to hold on to, and he's just allergic to any such shadow commitment to something that somehow floats above the world that we actually have. And just a few more thoughts here. He did not die in obscurity. He died on, interestingly, on the Feast of the Assumption in 1900. But by that time, after over 10 years of madness, of screaming delusion, he was famous. And this happened because, unlike Kierkegaard, who died in obscurity, there was a Danish critic, Georg Brandes, who brought his name to the public before Nietzsche went mad. And he correctly identified that there's a kind of aristocratic radicalism in Nietzsche. And I'll end with this thought. That's aristocratic radicalism does put him against our culture in so many ways, whether we're left or right, because if we think about the valorization of victimhood as we've got it in our political situation now, that's a Christian legacy. It's a Christian legacy that Nietzsche did abhor. He just hated that. But it's something that we can all, we're in the same basket. He saw it as ressentiment. He uses the French word for resentment there. He's saying, he really lays this out on the genealogy of morality. But if we're trying to make the victims of history the standard of our ethical action, he's saying that that's a way of trying to swamp the great men of history. And so that's not going to make him popular with I think any liberal or any Christian. And I think that's a very helpful thing to be challenged in these things, even if we're going to continue to hold, and as we should, I think, the preferential option for the victim. Can you read, I think the questions will come up on the chat, and if you would read.
Sure. So the first question is, what is Nietzsche's argument against our being able to judge the value of life? Does it make sense that he nevertheless valorizes a Dionysian will to life? Question 2, why does Nietzsche side with the sophists against Socrates and Plato? What does it take to rise above decadence? And question 3, According to Nietzsche, how does language trick us into the delusion that this world is a mechanism of things causally interacting, including human freedom, which in turn requires an other world to compensate for the deficiencies of that mechanism? How could free will be a fabrication by priests to achieve the most intimate power over others? Question 4. Is there anything to Nietzsche's critique of philosophy, Christianity, and liberalism? Do these movements ever evince a resentment and sickness of spirit, a will to power that condemns exuberance in life? Is there any room for care of the powerless in Nietzsche?